I think it was successful because we were committed. We were all working on the same page. We all had the same goals, which was success of the business. And we were all incredibly motivated, and we were willing to put in the time that it needed.
We have so many minutes on this planet. Why would you want to put your minutes into that half-empty bucket?
I do find that people get stuck on anger and disappointment with their former employer. Completely understandable. However, you need to move on from that.
Hi, I'm Karen Gilhooly. Welcome to Make Minutes Matter podcast. I'm here today with Nicole Meyer, a very successful female entrepreneur that I'd like you to know. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Karen.
Nicole and I have known each other for quite some time. I think it's hard to say, but it goes all the way back to the very early days of our career.
That's
if you can remember that.
I can remember it.
Yeah. So not to throw names around, but we met at Citibank. And we had such a great time there, talking about different products that were coming out to the market. It was really a great time in banking, wouldn't you say?
I think it was a spectacular time in banking. We worked hard, we played hard, we had a remarkable group of people, including the two of us, of course.
Yes.
But a great, great time.
What do you think made it so special?
The people, the team.
Yeah.
It was a growing business. I mean, it was, not to date us, but several decades ago, and banking was just taking off from a wholesale institutional banking perspective.
Yeah.
Foreign exchange was getting lots of press. Mm-hmm. People were finally figuring out the dynamics of how do you make money in this business. Yeah. Of course, they figured that out a long time ago, I'm sure, but it seems that it really took off when we were in banking, and we were in just the right place at the right time.
Who would ever think that banking could be such a hotbed of innovation, going all the way back then to where we are right now? It's just incredible.
Look, I don't think I set out to be a banker. I don't think I set out to work in banking, but I got there. Serendipity, luck, opportunity, whatever it was. And thankfully, somebody fabulous hired me into Citibank, into the group that we were in. Yes. Way back when, and it was a wonderful experience. And I think it was successful because we were committed. We were all working on the same page. We all had the same goals, which was success of the business. Mm-hmm. And we were all incredibly motivated, and we were willing to put in the time that it needed.
You know, the other thing that strikes me is that we were all relatively young in our careers. Most of the population. There were some that were a little bit older than us, some that were a little bit younger than us, but for the most part, the big group was relatively the same age. And for all of us, it was either our first or second job. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. In your business, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but in your business, you see a lot of people who are coming into the workplace, trying to find their way. That transition of going from not having any type of permanent professional assignment to all of a sudden having one, that can be really a tough bridge to cross. Any thoughts on that? Any ideas on that?
Bridging into whatever career step, whatever opportunity, whatever job you step into, I think it is infinitely easier when you really fully understand what's the objective here. What's the problem we're trying to solve for? I say that to people all of the time in my business. What is the problem we're trying to solve for? Do we actually understand where we want to be? And how do we get there? Mm-hmm. But I think having clearly defined goals, understanding what the problem is that we're solving for, understanding what the collective goal is and what your individual task is, I think it's all about understanding what it is you need to do and what skills you bring to the table and how you're going to be successful.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that they did very well. I think they aligned our talents and our skills and our interests in a really great way. Mm-hmm. And to be part of that dynamic environment for such a long time is pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit about change. Now, for those of you and the audience, Nicole is actually a highly successful corporate recruiter, specifically in transaction banking.
Yes.
Did I say that?
Yes.
And you've been in business for, what is it now?
15 years.
15 years,
yeah.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about how that happened, because we went from successful role selling wonderful transaction products to all of a sudden successful role selling a different kind of product.
Like many people, I ended up in banking not because I set out to be a banker, but because circumstance led me there, and I was very happy to have been there. And I was in transaction banking for 2 decades. Citibank was not my first bank. I was successful. I enjoyed it. I actually thought I would spend the rest of my career at Citibank. I never thought I would leave. I loved it. But circumstance had a different plan for me, as it were. And after about 15 years at Citibank, there was a reorganization and my role was eliminated. So my role was made redundant.
Yeah.
And I didn't anticipate that. I certainly would never have wished for that at the time. But what it did was propel me into a space where I had to make some decisions about what do I actually want to do. I mean, I've been made redundant. I had no job, and I needed to figure out what was going to be next for me. I'd been in this business for too long to turn around and pivot and do something completely different, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to walk away from the experience I had, the expertise I had, the network that I had. And so I needed to do some soul searching and some real hard work on what is it that I do well, what is it that I want to do, and where could I see myself for the next half of my career. I engaged with a coach. I thought that was a fantastic idea. I needed it. I needed some guidance. I needed the discipline of what actually do I do well. And it actually brings me to one of the things that I think everybody goes through in their career, whether they're aware of it or not, and that is the 4 quadrants of conscious competence. You know, you start out, as I did, with a conscious and unconscious bias about what I do well and what I like to do. And sometimes those things are completely mutually exclusive, and sometimes they overlap.
Sure.
But I really went through the process of what do I like to do? What do I not like to do? What am I good at? What am I not good at? And that was a difficult exercise, because I think we all think, look, I must be good at that. But at the end of the day, you think,
Am I
actually,
really?
Correct.
Yeah.
Am I really good at that? And actually, do I really like to do that? So through this process, I figured out that I had to be in a sales role. That is second nature to me. I enjoy it. I love it. I love to sell. I like the interaction. I like the challenge. And given that I was in financial services, I didn't want to step away from what I knew best and where I had subject matter expertise. And I was talking to a recruiter, a headhunter. And that headhunter was putting me in front of different banks for the same kinds of jobs that I had at Citibank. And I said, I've done that already. And in fact, I don't want to manage a large team of salespeople. That is not what I want to do.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that, and didn't like it. But I figured out what I wanted to do and what I did well. So this headhunter kept putting me in front of the same roles, and I finally said, I don't want to do that. I want to do something different. Yeah. At which point, this headhunter looked at me and said, why don't you just be a headhunter? You have expertise in a field where you don't see many recruiters and headhunters. You'd be great at it. You know the industry, you have the network, you have the subject matter expertise, and unfortunately, most of the time, recruiters, and very successful recruiters, don't have a basis in the business that they recruit for.
That's right.
So somebody thought I would be good at that. And
competitive edge.
Competitive edge. And in that instant, I truly felt a light bulb go off that, oh, actually, that sounds like a great idea. And I pursued it. And then I found a way to London, and I found a way into the Rose Partnership. It's a firm that's no longer here, but a remarkable firm led by a remarkable woman, Philippa Rose. And I actually sold her on my idea to come into her shop and start a corporate and transaction banking practice. And that started my career in 2007 in London as a recruiter. And then I started my own firm in 2009. So to go back to your original question about how I made the transition, I didn't ask for the transition. It was a challenging and a frightening experience to be made redundant and to have to then figure out what do you want to do. But I really took the time to try to figure out what would make me happy, where did I have core strengths and skills, and it has been a fabulous journey. It has been a wonderful second half of my career, and I'm still going.
That's good. That's wonderful. So a lot of people are going through transitions like this, and it's really an opportunity, I think, to either look at the glass as half full or half empty. And in my opinion, we have so many minutes on this planet. And why would you want to put your minutes into that half-empty bucket? In fact, there was someone that I used to know quite well, actually, and he'd say, Karen, life is a half-full glass, half empty every day and getting emptier by the minute. You know this person, by the way. Always very dour. We have to raise it up, I think. If you're going to try to do something different, going into it with a bad attitude doesn't help. Now, that's not easy, and I was wondering, so as you were going through this transition, how did it feel?
Awful. I mean, initially, it was a shock. But the reason that I want to be so transparent about how horrible it was when it happened is because I want people to know that there is life after redundancy, and there absolutely is. But the shock of it, I felt ashamed.
Yeah.
I felt like I failed. When in fact I had an incredibly successful career up until that point, and it was just a reorganization and circumstance that led to the redundancy. But I was embarrassed. My ego took a hit.
Yeah.
I really felt shame and ashamed and thought, what will people think of me? And I had to recalibrate how I thought about what I would do next, because after the initial shock, frankly, you have to pick up the pieces. You have to pick up the pieces. You have to find something else. And you need to figure out, what direction am I going to go in? And you have to take it as a snapshot in time. It happened. I need to find another opportunity, a career, a job, whatever it is that you're looking for, and move forward and find something that fuels your passion and that you want to do. I see a lot of people come to me after they've been made redundant to say, I need a new job, I've just been made redundant. And I say, fine, let's work on that. What do you want to do? What skills, at what level of consciousness are you about what you want to do and what you're good at? And then let's focus on that and see if your skills are relevant to the clients that I have and the roles that I have. I do find, and I think it's human nature, that people get stuck on anger and disappointment with their former employer. Completely natural, completely understandable. However, you need to move on from that.
That's right.
Because it
Minutes
permeates.
wasted.
Well, not only minutes wasted, but it comes through in conversation. And nobody wants to hire somebody who is bitter and angry.
Right.
And while it's natural, you have to really pivot. You have to move beyond that to a place of acceptance. I mean, it really is, sort of the 5 stages of grief, right? And you've got to go through them, because you will grieve what happened and the loss of that role and opportunity. And you have to move to acceptance and move forward and talk about the value and the contribution and the impact you can have on a new organization. And that's where you need to focus your efforts, versus being mad and angry and not being able to process that and get through it.
Yeah. Well, the big word right now is resilient, right? And I think that if you are one of the people that's stuck in this type of a situation, and stuck is a temporary word because it gives you a moment to reflect and think, as you said, but then it's your opportunity to actually recalibrate and figure out where you go from here. And as you said, that ability to pivot, I think, is something that's very attractive to people right now.
Absolutely. Look, I think it shows adaptability. It shows resilience. It shows industriousness, that you figured out what it was that you want to do instead, or that you might want to continue doing. But that's right. And I, that moment of being stuck, you need to move through that quickly.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah. So I remember a time, this is going back a couple of years now, and I was speaking with someone that had just gone through a process like this. Very angry, very upset, very demoralized. And the focus was not so much about using this as an opportunity to really think about what they like and where they belong for the next part of their career. Rather, it became, I have to get back to having the same thing, the same money, the same title, the same type of team, all of that. How do you work with people who are stuck like that? Because I think that's pretty common, and I'm not sure that that's really a great outcome for people.
It's not a good outcome, and it is exactly your point. You're stuck. You are really stuck there. The environment, the economic conditions, macro and micro, I mean, wherever you happen to find yourself, I think you have to abandon, I want this, I need to have the same whatever. And I think you have to look realistically at the market, what your opportunities are, what employment and unemployment looks like. I think you have to abandon all of that and just say, what will make me happy?
Yeah.
What will make me happy? I mean, I went from a well-paying job, managing a large team of people, to being an entrepreneur with zero income.
Yeah.
No title, except the title I gave myself as founder and CEO. That felt good. But I didn't make money for a while. And I worked from my couch in my living room. That is how entrepreneurs start. But whether you go back to a bank, a large company, you do something completely different, you go to work for a nonprofit, whatever it is, I think once you find yourself in that position, and frankly, whether you're made redundant or whether you just want to change because you're unhappy, or you find yourself in a position where you need to do something different, I think you have to abandon where you came from. The thought of, I have to get the same in the next position, and just think about, what is it that will make you happy? What will fuel your passion? What will get you excited to get up every morning and go to work and work hard? What's going to, I ask, when people come to me, when candidates come to me and say, I don't know what I want to do, I'm not sure what skill sets I want to focus on, I say, well, close your eyes for a minute. And mostly this is on the phone or on Zoom or something. So we're both on a Zoom call or a Teams call with our eyes closed looking at each other, and I say, think about the moments in the day where the day flies by, where you don't even think you're working, but you're enjoying something that you're doing at work. What are you doing when that happens? And people say, I'm writing a pitch for a client, I'm working on a sales pitch, or I'm doing financial analysis on the cost drivers of something, or whatever it is that they're doing. And I say, fine, you've just told me what it is you love to do and what you feel passionate about.
That's right.
Focus on that. So when you're out looking for your next opportunity, your next job, your next career, you need to focus on what makes you happy, what fuels your passion. And frankly, success will come with that, and so will remuneration.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I think that the process of reinventing yourself ultimately can be very attractive to a potential employer. This fact that you have journeyed through this emotional time, that you land on your feet, that you're there able to talk about what it is that you want to do in this next part of your career. I think that would be attractive to an upcoming potential employer.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Look, you are hired because you have some level of technical skill to the job, and then you have leadership skills. This is all about leadership skills. These are the softer skills that, in my opinion, are equally important, if not more important, than your technical skills. Because you can learn a technical skill. But those leadership skills of flexibility, your ability to pivot and change, given whatever the conditions are, resilience, attitude, those are huge leadership skills and incredibly important leadership skills. And if you can show a potential employer that you've pivoted successfully, you've been able to recalibrate how you think about things, you've been adaptable to economic market conditions, whatever it is, your personal situation, I think that's why you get hired at the end of the day. I think your ticket to entry is, do you have the technical skills? Fine, tick. Let's move on to the leadership skills. I think people are hired for their leadership skills and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, because you don't always have to be a leader of people. You can be a leader of yourself. And
Absolutely.
You can be a virtual leader. There's all different kinds of leadership that's required in today's workplace.
And that's right. And I think too often people associate with, I manage a huge team of people, I have people reporting to me, and that's leadership. Fine, that's an aspect of leadership, but there is so much more. You can be a thought leader, right? You are well known in your industry for white papers you write, or for getting quoted, for expertise you bring to the table. even managing your own brand,
Yeah.
even managing how the market perceives you is a leadership skill. Look, in today's world, the social media footprint that you have is a leadership skill.
Yeah.
What is Karen doing in the market? What is Nicole doing in the market? Who listens to them? Do they have a followership? How many followers do they have? And I don't mean on Instagram, because I'm not sure Instagram is the right gauge for financial services and what it is that we do. But
Right.
on LinkedIn, are you publishing papers? Are you doing podcasts?
Yes, yes.
Where are you showing up?
And what are you saying?
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there are an awful lot of companies right now that are going through transformation, okay? And you could be transforming any aspect of the business. But inevitably, a transformation typically ends with some number of people being repurposed, either within the company or given an opportunity to look for something outside the firm. And many of these transformations are not something that happen like this. They're long periods of time. And so, again, I can remember talking with numbers of people about this over the course of my career when we were executing various transformation programs. And I'd say, this in and of itself, to be able to manage this process and to do it well, and to keep a positive attitude and to deliver the results, companies want to see that. Companies are transforming. If you have managed a transformation and done it well, achieved the goals, that's a huge billboard for you. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. Being successful is one thing. If you then are looking for a job, if you're looking for a new career, if you are made redundant and it's time for the next thing, being able to succinctly convey on paper, on a resume or a CV, that you have been successful and perhaps carried out a transformational project like that, perhaps delivered the organization successfully through that kind of transformation. If you can't figure out how to describe that, how to illustrate that on a resume or CV, you are not doing justice to your career, and it will have an impact on your ability to find your next role.
So now let me ask you this question. So a lot of people are moving from one workplace to another, and they're coming into organizations in many cases for the first time. And how, from a leadership and a management perspective, the welcoming organization, let's talk a little bit about that. So we've talked about the individual getting themselves ready, okay? So, and I think there are a lot of people that are in that box right now. But then what about the receiving organization? What do they have to do in order to be able to support this type of a transformation initiative?
Well, I think we're talking about onboarding.
Perhaps.
And
the evil onboarding.
You would think that this would be a flawless process at this point. People are onboarded every day to new organizations. Yet it is a process that still has, in my opinion, a lot of flaws. And there are such easy fix-it remedies, but I'm not sure organizations have actually all embraced that and figured it out. Look, the onboarding process sets the tone for how new employees feel when they step in.
Yeah.
Do they feel welcomed? Are things organized and ready for them? Is there a plan and a training and development and initiation and acclimation program that will make a new employee feel like part of the family? In my experience, the two reasons people leave jobs is because they don't like their managers, they don't feel valued. The end. Those are the two reasons why I think people look for new jobs. And in my opinion, that absolutely speaks to onboarding and acclimation into a new company. Onboarding, what does it mean? It means somebody has their ID day one if they're going into the office. They have their computer set up, they can access day one email. Imagine, shouldn't there be maybe a welcome email in there to say, welcome Karen, welcome to your first day. Here's our program, here's what we're going to do, here are the people you're going to meet, here are the first 30 days. Here are two people you're going to shadow in the first 30 days who have the same job that you have or something similar, so you can get a better understanding of how we do things here. Doesn't this sound logical? As if it doesn't require much thought. I just said those things, yet companies just don't always do that. I have a nephew who is transitioning today in a new role that he's been in for several weeks. There's been no such onboarding or acclimation, very little training. He works remotely, and that may be part of the challenge as we get into our fourth year, embrace remote work. Mm-hmm. You'd think 4 years later, there could be some better processes, but there aren't. But he's had no training. He's had very little interaction. He understands his roles and responsibilities, but it's been really difficult to be more successful because he's just not getting the guidance that he needs. He's not been able to shadow anybody. He's not gotten sufficient training. And so he's struggling to get the job done. And it's completely understandable, but that will drive him away. My point is, after an extensive interview process and bringing somebody new in, he's going to leave because he's not getting what he needs. And I think companies have to accept that, understand it, and work harder on how to acclimate and onboard employees.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, the onboarding process, I think, has gotten a bad knock in the industry. As you've mentioned, lots of red tape, lots of paperwork, lots of rules and regulations, all of that type of stuff. But the true stuff, going back to what you said before, the focus on the soft skill. How do you plug into our organization? How do you bring your best self to work? Why did we hire you? We hired you for a reason. But new people very rarely hear that, and that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, and I think we need to keep talking about that so people understand how can you afford to lose someone after you've gone through that significant investment of time and bringing somebody in. Mm-hmm. Why leave it to chance and risk losing an employee because it's hard to find somebody to equal who it is that you've lost frequently. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't need to happen. It just doesn't need to happen. And I think companies just need to work harder on onboarding. Yeah. And if you think about corporate titles, if you think about the roles that we know best in financial services, I never hear about anybody who is director of onboarding. It is a subset of what human resources does, recruitment, but the actual onboarding of employees, I think, gets insufficient attention in most firms.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So I did some research going back a couple months, and I don't remember all the exact statistics, but there is one that Gallup found that said that people who feel invested in their first 30 to 60 days on the job, and invested means the managers come over and had a conversation with them, they've been welcomed, they've had this conversation about how you plug in and how we do things around here. They're embraced by the organization. That those people not only will say that that's the best job ever, but they will also refer their friends and family to that firm. And so I was having this conversation with someone a few weeks ago, and they said, well, referrals, what's an employee going to do? And referrals, like referring people, they're going to refer to their family. I said, well, these people are working for companies that produce products that families do buy.
Exactly.
So it's not, when we think about this whole referral network, it's pretty holistic, in my opinion.
And incredibly important. And not only referrals, I think it's the reputational risk that companies then have. So referrals, absolutely. Friends and family will buy the products, but also they will refer people to come work there.
Yes.
And provide free recruitment. Mm-hmm. But not only that, I think the opportunity cost of the reputational risk is a huge issue for companies, because people who leave because they are unhappy everyone publishes everything today. So they publish their comments about terrible onboarding, no training, no whatever it is. And that's bad for business.
It truly is. This is going back a couple of months, I was sitting with someone, and they were going through a process of trying to figure out why it is that we're having such a tough time attracting new talent. And so when I asked them what their attrition rate looked like, and it was above 50%, I said, have you taken a look at some of the comments on Glassdoor?
Absolutely.
They hadn't looked at that.
Yeah. No, they rarely do. They rarely do. I mean, companies have a huge amount of data at their disposal on retention rates, on who stays, on can they infer from who stays, who leaves, why people leave, why they're losing employees, why people are not staying longer, who comes to the firm and who is successful. I think companies have all this data, yet again, I don't think from an HR perspective that people are looking sufficiently at the data. Now look, I'm not disparaging what HR does. Massively important function within organizations. In fact, I would say one of the most important functions in organizations.
As long as it has the human
element to it.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes, it's not robot relations.
Yes.
It's human relations.
Exactly.
Human
Absolutely.
resources, yes.
That's right. So I think companies have a lot of data and a huge opportunity to improve upon how they onboard and how they manage employees there.
So it's interesting though when we talk about data. Again, over the course of my career, and certainly for what I've been doing for the past 18 months or so, what I find is that the data is there, but people are actually afraid to look at it. Have you encountered any of this, where it's like, well, we don't want to look at it because it might not say good things. If you've got a problem, the first step of solving the problem, at least in my book, as simple as it is that you have to be able to get a baseline of where you're at in order to move ahead. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if it's fear of what I'm going to learn as it is.
Or maybe just what would I do about it? What do I do about it? The what I do about it maybe might be a stalling point too.
I would hope not. I mean, that's the problem you're solving for, right? What I mentioned earlier, you have always got to go back. I go back always to, well, what's the problem I'm solving for today?
True. This is true.
In all aspects of my life. But in that particular example, look, I would think companies would want to know why they have a high rate of turnover. Why is it that they are losing skilled workers that they've spent months trying to recruit? So I imagine it's just priorities. I mean, I really do assume that it is just priorities in the scheme of what goes on every day, and that is not yet the priority that companies want to focus on.
Yeah. And maybe with the onset of AI and some of the other things that are the new tools that are coming in, maybe that'll make it a little bit easier. And not just easier in terms of the compilation, but also in the digestion. So again, I can remember over the years seeing reams and reams and reams of reports, not necessarily on people issues, but on other issues. And when you look at these big stacks, it's overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And so if there was a way to break that down using some of these tools to be able to understand the people elements of it, maybe that leads to a better life.
And I imagine it would be. And my guess is at this point with AI and with where technology is taking us in financial services, those tools are available.
If you were to give 3 things, 3 little gifts to the person who's feeling stuck, or maybe the manager that's going to receive them on the other side of this transformation. So I'm going to ask you for 6 gifts in total, 3 for the individual, 3 for the manager. What would they be? What would you suggest to them? Little pearls of wisdom.
For employees, for individuals, for candidates, be really clear on what you want to do, what fuels your passion. Take the time to assess your skills and figure out what your strengths are, what you enjoy doing, and what you don't enjoy doing. Be really clear on what it is that you want to do. Second pearl of wisdom, understand the definition of value, contribution, accomplishment, what you bring to another firm. Because if you are out there looking for a new job and you cannot articulate to a prospective employer the value and contribution you can bring to the table, and I think there are financial metrics associated with that, you cheat yourself out of an opportunity to present yourself with more conviction and more powerfully. And I'll give you just a very quick example of that.
Sure.
If you are a manager of people and you have concluded and you have proof that you are a good manager of people and developer of talent, take a look at turnover on your own team.
Yeah.
First of all, if you have turnover over 30%, maybe you might not be a good manager. Could be circumstance, but I'm just saying you might not be the best of managers. So, but if you have a good statistic to show that in the 7 years you've managed a team, you've had 2% turnover, that says something about you as a manager.
Yeah.
That is a data point that you can share with a prospective employer to say, in my 7 years managing, I had 2% turnover. That tells a prospective employer, oh, actually, they might be good at managing people, because it's really hard to assess if you're a good manager. So understand where your skill set is for employees. 2, have a data point. 3, learn how to network.
Yes.
And I mean network well.
Yes.
I don't mean
drop a line on LinkedIn every once in a while.
Because you want a job from that person.
Right,
Correct.
right.
In networking, give before you receive.
That's right.
If you have an agenda with somebody and you want to meet somebody for networking purposes, for your job prospects, connect and offer something. Find some common ground on which to connect to that person. I mean, networking is a meaningful two-way dialogue. That's here. True. It is not you wanting a job and trying to figure out how I'm going to get Karen Gilhooly to answer my text or email.
It's actually pretty off-putting, isn't it?
Oh, it's awful.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. Yes. So those are my 3 pearls of wisdom for
the individual.
The individual. For companies that are bringing employees on with onboarding, involve your team. Yeah. Involve the team that this individual is stepping into. Get them involved in the onboarding process. Too often,
excited.
Yes, and excited that somebody new is coming to the team. This is the skill set they're bringing, where there may not be that skill set before, or maybe there is lots of that skill set, but you need more. Get the team involved and get the level of engagement with the new employee right up there from even before day 1. Have team members send a note that says, welcome, excited for you to join the team, Karen. Looking forward to meeting you. That level of engagement is so important.
It is.
Secondly, have incredibly specific roles, responsibilities, and metrics that will define success. Help new employees understand what that is, so that there's no surprise when people arrive to say, I thought I was hired to do that.
Yeah.
And things change. Things change all the time.
They do.
But make sure that that level of communication is there.
Because it makes the person feel better. They can measure themselves.
Of course it does.
Yes.
Of course it does. And 3, there are lots of other ways to keep employees engaged. Make sure that you are having performance appraisals, a minimum, in my opinion, of twice a year, if not more. A minimum of twice a year, if not 3 times or 4 times a year, even if it's an informal check-in. I find it really unfair at the end of a calendar year to deliver a poor performance rating to someone that you haven't spoken to all year.
That's
and you haven't told them, you're not meeting our expectations. This is not what we would expect from performance from you. I think it's really unfair at the end of the year to share that with somebody when you've given them no indication before that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could not agree with you more. But on that note, and I know I only asked you for 3 points on this.
You're asking for a 4th?
I am asking for a 4th. So here we are in that last category, the performance reviews where they're not happening, and the manager's very busy and distracted and all of that. Is it possible that the employee can use their voice to say, hey,
absolutely,
I want to check in with you? I mean, that was something that was very important to me, that if I, for whatever reason, missed a check-in or something like that, I gave permission to people to call me on it.
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, that doesn't happen enough. Employees should be asking for mid-year check-ins, mid-year reviews, quarterly reviews. And if you are working for somebody who is not giving you the time and not doing that for you, in my opinion, here's what I would do. Here's what I would do if I were that employee. I would put together my own performance appraisal.
Yeah.
I would write it myself and say, based upon the job description that I was hired in to do, these 4 definitions of success, whatever defines success in the role. Here's what I've done this quarter. Here's what I've done so far this year. Here's how I think I am performing against those goals. I would write that up, send that to your manager, if only to say, would you agree?
Yeah.
1, I think you need to document these things. If you are not getting a response at all from your manager, and your manager sits in the same office and you happen to go to the office, then I think you have to walk into that office and say, just wanted to check in with you. Would you agree with what I sent for my quarterly performance appraisal?
Yeah.
And look, unfortunately, I think if you don't get an answer and you feel that you want that feedback and you really want that feedback, which of course you do, if you're not getting it from your manager, you go one level up or you go to HR and you ask for that performance appraisal. I think it's very fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think it happens enough. I think people are timid, they're worried, they're afraid of what they might hear. But I think it gives you a really good indication of what you're doing well today and where you need to improve if that's the case.
Yeah. Next to the onboarding process, the next maligned area is the performance review.
Yes, it is.
And maybe when I invite you back to our next podcast,
we can talk about
talk
those.
about performance reviews.
I'd love to.
Because I really do believe that feedback, even though it might be tough to give sometimes, is the only way to stay engaged with what you're doing. Because let's face it, nobody does everything really well, but not everybody does everything really poorly either. So in the balance, I think that you can have a good view of how you're performing in the role.
Absolutely, and that session we're going to call the gift of feedback.
The gift
that is
of
what
feedback.
that is what I call it. The gift of it is a gift. You're getting a gift when you get that kind of feedback, whether it's good or bad.
If people want to get in touch with you, Nicole, maybe they want to share a thought with you or even give some feedback on this, where can they find you?
I am on LinkedIn, Nicole Meyer. They can go onto my website and email me from there, or they can just go on to LinkedIn. And while we're on that topic, if I may,
Sure.
I get 5 requests a day minimum from people I don't know, in my industry and sometimes not in my industry, who want 30 minutes of my time to discuss their career. I don't have 30 minutes for anybody except for you.
Okay, great.
For anyone reaching out, for anyone trying to network, to look for a new job, to expand their network, don't ask people for 30 minutes of their time. I barely have enough time in my day to do my job. Talking to you is extra, and I don't have 30 minutes, and it's very off-putting to get 5+ requests a day for 30 minutes, because if I'm doing my math right, 5 times 30, that's a couple of hours in my day every day that people want to tap my expertise. That's not my job.
Yeah.
So please don't ask for 30 minutes. To anyone out there who wants to talk to me, do not ask for my 30 minutes. Rather,
find other ways.
Find another way to get 5 or 10 minutes of my time, or maybe we can just email back and forth, because that's faster, and I can do that at 10 o'clock at night rather than having to get on the phone with you.
Yeah.
I am very open to people's comments, to their feedback, and if they are in my industry, I'm very interested in knowing them. But please don't be offended if I say no to your 30-minute request.
Very good, very good. All right, the gift of feedback is next. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you
this was
very
fun.
much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Make Minutes Matter. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know what you thought of today's conversation by following us on Instagram at Karen Gilhooly 1. That's Karen, Karen, Gilhooly, Gilhooly, and the number 1. Let's make every moment in your career truly matter. Have a great day.